Hey everybody, I hope you had happy holidays and are easing into the new year relatively well. My start's been a little rocky. My mic broke as we were trying to record this for the first time, so we're using a blue snowball for now as I look into other options to use this as an opportunity to upgrade my audio setup anyways. Today we're going to be looking at a Path of Exile build. We're not going to call it a guide, we're going to call it more of a diary. But there are not a lot of Dominating Blow Herald of Purity builds out there, so I thought I'd get this out there. Take a look at one of the proper Path of Exile hipster builds for anybody who wants to give it a try. This build has absolutely absurd single target DPS, at least for myself. If you really wanted to, you could probably number rank it up to like 5 or 6 million single target Shaper DPS. But right now we're running on 4 million single target Shaper DPS on a 5 link. But there are some issues with that. The build is absolutely not perfect, and there's a lot of different problems that need to be solved and actually can be solved with a couple easy changes to the build. So we're just going to throw in a Elder Guardian map here. I haven't actually gotten to do much running yet. Unfortunately, Acropolis is not great, but it's the only Elder Guardian map I have right now to show off some of the PowerPoints and some of the drawbacks of the build. We are going to be zooming fairly quickly here. Once we've killed a few of the monsters at the start, you'll notice our 4 minions will dramatically explode if I can get around these little tight corners here. And we're going to have an absolute whale of a time going through this here. Metamorph League has been particularly rough. It's required me to play a little bit different. I've learned a lot actually about the single target playstyle of this build. This was a build that I'd started last league, but the Metamorph power level has certainly required me to step up my game a little. The main playstyle of the build, you're going to run around. Every time you see a pack of enemies, you're going to run in, hit them a couple times. If it's a scarier pack or it's got a rare, you might just want to use your Convocation. Ooh, there you go. Should have done a little sooner there. Pop it in. And we're using a self-cast Vigilant Strike with the Threshold Jewel to apply Fortify to our entire team, giving them all those stars under their feet, make our minions a little more durable, because our minions by default are not incredibly durable. That's one of the main issues of the build, especially for single target bossing. It's not the fastest build around, but you can see rare monsters, even just with like a few of your minions nearby, just absolutely explode, disappear entirely from the face of the earth, face of the map. And as we make our way, just gonna kind of zoom to the boss here. Hopefully get the Elder Guardian procced pretty quickly here. The boss himself will usually die in a matter of seconds. And you can see right now we've got an absolutely massive number of minions, all with Fortify. We had an allies or gain substantial physical aura. Unfortunately, we're going to take this portal and all of that is going to disappear. And this is one of the main issues we've got here. This works against us with Metamorph as well, as our Metamorph minions decay while we're waiting. You can see our minions are going to decay while we wait here. It's not as bad as with certain other bosses, but even with the Conquerors, sometimes the delay causes your minions to disappear before they go. What we're going to do at the start of the map here, or start of the boss fight here, is we're just going to wail on the Purifier. We're going to Vigilant Strike to provide a bunch of extra damage through the Curse on Hit Vulnerability Vigilant Strike we're applying here, as well as making ourselves and our minions a little more resilient. We've got most of our minions up. Oh, golly. I was not paying proper attention there. We've got most of our minions up in that portion of the fight. That is just some absolutely abysmal play right there. But this is going to show... and now we've got to start over from the start with a new set of minions. So we've got to come in here as true name-lock melee, spawning ourselves in and attempting to spawn our minions in. Currently we're on fire because of the map. We're going to just keep avoiding him here. He does hit pretty hard in a T16 with some buffs. They now get the buffs applied, which they did not before. Whoop. There you go. You can see T16 with a little bit of monster life down. Just, I mean, if you're a little less trash, just atrociously easy. our minions would have stayed alive, and that third phase would have gone even faster, just with a little bit better dodging, once you've kind of got all your minions up. But you can see one of the main problems with the build is kind of on display there. We're name lock melee, and even though our minions are going to do most of the work, if we're not attacking enemies, it takes about 7 seconds to get all of our minions up. Once our minions are all up, we're good for, I believe, 10, 15, 20 seconds at the least for some of our shorter duration minions. But it takes about 7 good seconds of attacking to get all of our minions up. For bosses that are immune for temporary points while they do animations, that's actually amazing, because oftentimes they don't do any damage while they're immune, and you can actually just wail on them and get your procs. But for bosses that are going to make it hard for you to attack them and do especially a lot of damage while you're stationary, you're going to have a hard time getting your minions up. What becomes even worse is when your minions start dying during a fight, and unfortunately, you're right, we do not have a boss piece here, so we're not going to be able to get anything out of this, and we're cranking up the difficulty of this Metamorph. Unfortunately, we might end up making a mistake here. With the Metamorphs, your main goal plan, your main game plan, actually, is to attack the main Metamorph for a little bit, get your Fortify up, get your vulnerability on him, and then get him to spawn all of his little friends and go beat those guys up, because, woo baby, there we go, we've got an Exalted Orb out of this map. This is looking great. Because, woof, that threw me for a loop. Because the auras that the enemies give are dangerous, but also, notice we've got substantial fizz right now on us, bringing our DPS from a solid 23,000 to just above 28,000 for that actual ZDPS single target self-cast meme. But you can see the single target on the build is pretty good. Metamorphs make it a little more difficult as they spawn a bunch of different enemies and just have a severe amount of deadly mechanics. To make it even more of a clusterfuck, we do have the option to cast a Val Summon Skeletons, increasing the Clown Car meme factor of the build. Just that little extra bit. They really don't do anything other than draw aggro. They're fantastic for Blight, blocking lanes and buying time while you go and attack, you know, the other minions on the other side, because you are melee. You run over, convocate your minions, and yeah, the Val Summon Skeletons buy you a bunch of time for that, but they also increase the clusterfuck a little and make it hard to see exactly what's going on, especially with the Metamorphs, where it's hard to see what their animations are, it's hard to see exactly what they're doing. It's more about just knowing the timing. We're going to take a look at the passive skill tree here and go over a couple important nodes and choices. We are a Guardian, which could be better. Harmony of Purpose is a fantastic node, except the power, frenzy, and endurance charges you get on hit you share with party members, but not minions. So our minions are not going to be getting crit damage, or the defense provided by endurance charges, unfortunately, from Harmony of Purpose. This would go a long way to making the build incredibly more viable. We'd be able to drop our Frenzy Spectres most of the time for Proximity Shield, or Taunting Spectres that provide, or perhaps even just Damage Spectres, because we have so much minion damage scaling on the tree. Time of Need is just a decent defensive node. Both of these nodes are just, they only help us, and are actually essentially just wasted nodes on the tree. The main two nodes here are Radiant Crusade, giving allies Onslaught and 10% more damage. That's a big crunchy node. And then Unwavering Crusade, giving everybody damage, attack, cast, and movement speed, as well as intimidating and unnerving enemies on hit, having them take 10% increased spell and attack damage. Guardian is a perfectly fine choice for the build. It's a little more defensive than the other option. Sometimes you get endurance charges from this, and then the 30% regen and 25% reduced effective curses and removing elemental ailments is nice. Whoa! We almost dropped our mic for a second there. Cut the tape, no. So we are running a few interesting nodes that have helped a lot. These nodes here down to Indomitable Army have allowed us to cap our minion elemental resistances. We were running 50% resistances on our minions before. Bringing them up to 75% resistances means that they're taking about half the damage that they previously were. These minion damage and mana nodes are nice, but there's other ways to solve your mana. So if we were able to drop these nodes, we'd save about 7 nodes. We'd be able to grab these life nodes on the tree, and perhaps these and these armor nodes to make us more defensive. Aside from that, we're just grabbing a lot of life, minion damage, minion accuracy rating, minion duration is incredibly helpful, and the skill effect duration. Our self-cast Vigilant Strike is giving 30 seconds of Fortify to us and our allies. We are running a self-cast Steel Skin as well, which does last for just above 2 seconds, providing us with a decent amount of defense as well. We do have a decently large life pool. There are ways we can upgrade it. We're running a little low just because we're running a Hungry Loop to get an extra 5 link for our Herald of Purity. We do have a chest piece that we're working on 6 linking here that would give us a significant boost to our life, an extra 40 or 30 base life, as well as 9% more increased maximum life. So it's not difficult at all to get above 7k life on this build. However, if you do want to get your armor up, currently we're running only about 5,000 armor. If you do want to run your armor up, you do have to sacrifice a little bit of life, or pay out the rectum for a significantly better gear. Everything else is just rares with life and resists. Currently, everything was bought for 5 chaos or less. Everything here is budget except our chest piece was about 10 chaos, and then we 5-linked it ourselves, which is incredibly lucky. You'd probably be looking to pay 30 or 40 chaos for something like this. And then finally we do have the Scourge Terror Claws, which are each currently going for about 10 to 20 chaos, because the Elder is harder. The Elder and his Guardians are harder to spawn this league, but you can actually just run Bright Beaks in these slots. You'll drop about 30% of your DPS, but when you're looking to increase your DPS as you hit about T10, T12, T13 maps, you can look into investing into 1 or 2 Scourges. With Brightbeak, you also have the option of being a little more defensive and grabbing a shield. You could do that with this, but the amount of damage a second Scourge Claw gives you, the attack speed, is just absolutely amazing. It's almost unbelievable how much it helps. Whirling Blades, I do feel, is faster to move around with than Leap Slam. I do like Leap Slam more, so Brightbeak is a perfectly fine choice to run throughout 90% of the game. And again, you might be able to get a little bit more defensive yourself. As we look on the tree for a few other important nodes, you'd think that Spiritual Aid would be important for increasing and reducing minion... increases to minion damage rating also affecting us is important, right? However, we are getting it on both of our Scourge Claws, so we only need one of those 3 rolls. And secondly, our DPS is sitting somewhere, buffed and, looking in Path of Building, is sitting at about 40,000. Whereas our minions are reaching about 4 million combined DPS. So obviously our DPS is not that important. The main node on the tree that is helping us a lot is Spiritual Command, increasing minion attack speed, increasing ours, is giving us approximately 40% of our attack speed, 30% of our attack speed right now. And our attack speed is hugely important. It makes our Holy Relic cast more frequently, which is useful at the start of the map, and as well a little bit against boss fights, but mainly just helping us spawn all our minions faster after they die or after they've been refreshed against certain boss phases or timed out. And then finally we're getting Resolute Technique. It's possible we could drop this and path differently on the tree, maybe path more into Necromancer, grab some energy shield rather than just a lot of life, but a lot of life is fine. We get extra attack speed down here. And Resolute Technique obviously solves any accuracy issues whatsoever. We are running a Vigil Crimson Jewel just to give us Vigilant Strike, fortifying us and nearby allies for a good 30-some seconds. And then secondly, Fluid Motion to transform this 40 strength here, 10, 20, 30, 40, into dexterity, which is just enough with no dex on items to cap your dexterity at exactly what you need. None of our gear needs to have attributes on it at all, which is fantastic. Let me unsocket this just to make sure. There you go. Our amulet is just like 4 or 5 chaos. Amulet with life resistances and a little bit of global defenses. Our increased armor is low, so thankfully that brings us up a little bit more. If we take this out, we go down to 4,300. 5,000 armor is still not great, and that could definitely be improved. But nothing else on the tree is incredibly important, just minion damage, life, minion damage, minion defenses are handy. If we were to switch the build up, it would be nice to go up to Death Attunement to be able to get up to 3 Spectres and then possibly 4 throughout, and we're going to tab to Path of Building here, if we were to go Necromancer, we would fix a lot of the issues this build has. The one thing you would lose is the Omega Lol Hipster Guardian Namelock Melee, but still being a Namelock Melee Witch running Scourge Claws or Brightbeak as a dominating blow build would be interesting. We're going to look at some of the DPS here. You can see that these nodes here are not giving us a significant amount of DPS. They are giving us a significant amount of minion life, and obviously our minion resistances are capped by this. We'll go over our DPS real quick here first. Ignore the attack cast rate on Holy Relic. This is bugged in Path of Building. I'm not using the fork. This is bugged in Path of Building. It seems that they're attacking casting closer to their cooldown, which is 0.25 seconds, so up to 4 times a second. It's not quite synced up with our attack speed, so I would guess probably 3 to 4 times a second. We'll go with 3. So our Holy Relics alone, when we attack enemies, are doing 80,000 times 3 is 240,000 damage per second, is very helpful. You could run the Joffrey's Crest Helm, and that probably wouldn't infringe upon your ability to get them to attack more frequently, and running 2 of them obviously would generally double your damage, but they're not the main contributor to our damage. The helmet we're running right now is just a helmet that gives them plus to levels for increased defenses and increased damage. We are running with our Holy Relics summon Phantasms, and as I said, we're not running Spell Echo, even though it benefits both of them, because it is not affecting Holy Relic. Even though it looks like it does in Path of Building, it doesn't actually cause them to cast twice. You summon them twice, they don't cast twice themselves. But our summoned Phantasms, which we can have, ooh, that's a good question, up to 11 summoned Phantasms. They each have 34,000 DPS, so with our Phantasms up, we're hitting about 340,000. So we're hitting about 700,000 DPS just from our Holy Relic summoned Phantasms, which is all we'll kind of have up at the start of the map. We won't even have our Phantasms up at the start of the map. So they're handy. And with, of course, Feeding Frenzy, which we'll get to in a second, they get a few other buffs. Just to prove that we're not number ranking too hard here, we do have, oh geez, whoops, there we go. We're number ranking a little bit. That was an oopsie. We're going to scale those numbers back by about 10%. Our minions do not have power charges because we do not grant them power charges. Our minions do have frenzy charges because we have 2 frenzy specters. I think 2 is kind of the right number. It lets them kind of get up to that 3 a little faster. We have socketed our Frenzy Specters with Blood Magic to allow them to cast more frequently, because the Specters that you run technically have a mana pool, so if you don't run them with Blood Magic, they will only use the Frenzy and Cry every so often. The easiest way to pick them up, and if you did get more Specters, you could run the Power Charge Spectre as well, both of which can be found in the Ashen Fields here. Just go run around, kill the Host Chieftain, and the Carnage Chieftain being the Frenzy one, and the Host Chieftain being the Power Charge one. We're currently not even running Desecrate. They don't die that often, thankfully, except against big bosses like Cyrus, which we've tried, and is very difficult for this build. We'll get over that in a second here. But just go to the Ashen Fields, you can resummon all your Specters there. We'll take a look here. Again, we're running a Whirling Blades. Val Summon Skeletons is in there just for space. War Banner for extra damage, accuracy, and Flesh and Stone for extra damage or extra defenses. We're currently running a Stibnite Flask anyways to give us the dodge chance and evasion chance, which also, or blind, but gives our Specters and minions as well better chance to dodge and evade enemy attacks. So our Dominating Blow, we're currently socketing with minion damage, melee physical damage, and brutality, obviously. Multi-strike is incredibly helpful. It increases our attack rate substantially, more so than basically anything else. You can see faster attacks only increases our attack rate by 18%. Dropping brutality dropping multi-strike drops our attack rate by more than 30%. It also supports the Dominating Blow Sentinels, and I believe makes them slam 3 times, so I'm not actually sure about that. The slam DPS is absolutely absurd, and when they use it, everything just dies, and it's absolutely fantastic. But you can see here, even just with our default attack, our Sentinels of Dominance are hitting 170k DPS each. We do have 9 of those, so we're hitting almost 2 million DPS. And if you managed to socket in Bloodlust for single target because the map clear is fine, or Ruthless if you just wanted better map clear, or again, even Fortify if you just wanted to keep them alive a little longer just in case our Fortify is not up. But if we were to get a 6th link here, they'd be hitting 240k DPS per Sentinel of Dominance. We've got 9 up against bosses, which means that we'd be hitting over 2 million DPS rather than just under. So that would be absolutely fantastic. And then again, when you're mapping, you've got magic Sentinels, you've got rare Sentinels giving you auras, and they have even more damage. So the majority of our damage comes from Dominating Blow. Herald of Purity does provide a significant amount of damage. Each one is doing about 206,000. Again, with Feeding Frenzy, factor that into all these numbers here, giving a little bit more damage, about 10% more damage and 10% cast speed and attack speed or so. So our Sentinels of Purity have 200,000 damage per second each. We've got 4 of those. It would be nice to get up to 5 of those, get an easy million off of these guys, but again, with Feeding Frenzy, we're already hitting about 1 million DPS with our Heralds. Obviously, when they use Crusade Slam, that 200k each becomes 270k each, because holy crap, does that do damage. It hits in an AoE. And Crusade Slam is absolutely fantastic. Guardian used to be the best build for this because it allowed them to use Crusade Slam and gave them a shorter cooldown on it, but unfortunately that has been removed. If it reduced the cooldown on the Slam, it would possibly be the best ascendancy for this, but regardless, it's fine. We're never going to be summoning Spectral Wolves. We've usually got like 1 or 2 out from the random white mobs that we kill. We're not actually killing mobs ourselves, which makes Herald of Purity a little hard to maintain, so just hit rare monsters, unique monsters, and that'll keep up your Herald of Purity. As I said, so Herald of Purity we summon relatively quickly. We need about 20 hits, whereas for Dominating Blow we need, what is it? It's 27 hits or so. And our attack rate is buffed up just under 6 here. So, oh, there you go. So our attack rate is just under 6 here, so we need to attack for a good 5 to 7 seconds to get up all of our Dominating Blow minions. To improve the build and provide minions with more defenses, perhaps more skill effect duration, the best option is probably to reroll this as Necromancer. We would lose, obviously, the onslaught damage and a cast and attack speed from here. We would lose ourselves, obviously onslaught, and you can see by unsocketing these 2 nodes, we lose about 1/3 of our minions' damage, and a little bit more because enemies will no longer be intimidated / unnerved. But even just unnatural strength alone gives 20% more damage for all of our minions. It gives more for minions like our Herald of Purity, and it would allow us to have all of our minions survive significantly longer. You can see it gives our Herald of Purity minions 25% more life. It gives our Dominating Blow minions a good 20% more life. And then our Spectres, Carrion Golems, and Holy Relics, which we want to avoid dying at all costs. Well, it's not showing my Spectres here. I didn't add them into the Path of Building here, but are giving about 23% more life. Additionally, about 10% more damage from Mindless Aggression here. A little bit less for our... 10% more damage for our Dominating Blow. Just movement speed, damage, attack, and cast speed. The attack speed does apply to us, so that would help replace the Onslaught. And then Bone Barrier would be absolutely fantastic, giving us 10% extra physical damage reduction, 30% extra resistances. We'd be able to drop a few resistances and not be elemental weakness capped. And then an extra bit of recovery rate of life and energy shield. That would make up for not quite the Guardian time of need, giving us regen, but it would still help significantly. And then obviously Bone Armor functioning essentially as Steel Skin, but also applying to our minions, and then giving minions 20% more maximum life. Like, these 3 nodes alone are a great reason to go Necromancer. You'd have the option of going through kind of any of the other Necromancer nodes. Obviously the main ones that would be important are Commander of Darkness, which actually is not going to be very helpful. Giving the extra elemental resistances would let us drop more nodes on the tree, which would be nice, but unfortunately we're not casting very many auras ourselves, so that's not going to help a ton. We are hoping that Mistress of Sacrifice would be the way to go. We're currently not running any offerings just for hotkey space and gem socket space, but you could definitely squeeze them into the build. Desecrate and Flesh Offering probably for damage, and that would affect you with Mistress of Sacrifice, and the increased skill effect and minion duration would help make your minions last longer, especially for things like Metamorphs, or as you saw that Guardian fight there, more of them would have survived at the start, and same with the Conqueror fights. If we did end up grabbing, unfortunately Bone Barrier doesn't give allies resistances, but if you do grab Commander of Darkness, that extra 20% resistance would almost allow you entirely to drop these nodes without worrying about it, allowing you to go up here and grab these life nodes, bringing us up to, without anything else, a cool 6,600 life. Again, with better gear, more expensive gear, you'd be able to bring that up even higher, and you'd probably be able to grab with that as well, because you're saving 9 points from here. This only costs you 5 points. You'd be able to grab these 3 nodes for a bunch of extra armor, or these 3 nodes for a bunch of extra armor and regen, and then a little bit of something else on the tree. We are currently only level 90. There's a good 5 more levels that we can get to get a bunch more of this stuff on the tree. If we did get those 5 more levels, we could go up here, but we'll probably be getting this node next. So Necromancer is a great way to solve a lot of the build's problems. Getting resistances on your minions is important, very important, but when it comes to a boss like Cyrus, there's not too much you can do. So Cyrus the Awakener is the final boss in the new Atlas, and we did try him once on Awakener level 5. The issue is we're name-lock melee. We have to attack him for about 7 seconds to have all our minions up. Our minions are going to dive into the storm. Even with Convocation, it's almost impossible to keep them alive. Even our Spectres, who are equipped with Meat Shield as well, giving us extra tankiness. Being taunted by the Spectres helps, and our Carrion Golem helps keep us alive a little bit better. But it's almost impossible to keep these minions alive against Cyrus. Obviously everybody playing Summoner has seen that as an issue, but being name-lock melee certainly doesn't help against a boss that requires you to juke so much, the Meteor Cage and everything. It's just Cyrus is a mess. It's not impossible, but it's the kind of fight that takes you a significant amount of practice, specifically with this build, I feel, in terms of keeping your minions alive. This is a build I did play in a previous league, and I used it to kill the Uber Elder, but that is a very difficult fight because it takes you so long to get up your minions and they died so fast. With access to these nodes, it would have been a little easier, but having your minions gain extra elemental resistances is incredibly important. You could probably socket out some auras to try and run a few other things. Interestingly, you could also possibly run Herald of Agony, swapping out auras, or perhaps Herald of Purity entirely to run Herald of Agony, but running Herald of Agony as name-lock melee is obviously a little difficult, but Herald of Agony is interesting. I haven't actually tried it in this build. It would increase your dex requirement a little bit, at least, I believe. Yeah, just a little, so not too bad, but Herald of Agony would be an interesting way to go, even just as a supplemental minion, swapping out a few other auras, and maybe perhaps dropping Dominating Blow entirely and focusing on Herald of Purity and Herald of Agony, and then perhaps like a Blade Flurry or something that attacks fast, and maybe not being name-lock to be able to apply your poisons from a little bit more of a distance. So that's a totally fine option. One of the advantages of this build is that if you want, with sacrificing a little bit of viability, you can easily hit 42 minions while mapping if you run some zombies as well. Currently we're hitting, I think, 33 minions while we're mapping without even popping Val Summon Skeletons. So you can hit almost 100 minions on this build for the absolute meme factor if that's what you're wanting. But the issues with the build, they're not insurmountable. And I do think Necromancer is the way to go to make your minions significantly more tanky. The only question is and to possibly get a 4th Spectre running a natural strength, or coming up here for the extra Spectre. But running Mistress of Sacrifice and prioritizing offerings a little stronger, or even just going Commander of Darkness and giving allies elemental resistances. That is only nearby allies, so as you leave, your minions would lose some damage. And yeah, I've got a big sheet of notes here beside me. I'm sure there are a few things that I've missed Currently we are running a not self-cast vulnerability, but on our fortify we're cursing on hit with vulnerability. We don't really need it for mapping other than to hit single targets with. You could run, if you really wanted the absolute most damage on your dominating blow, you could even possibly swap out multi-strike, but you could run Bloodlust, which wouldn't apply again to regular enemies, but it would bring your Sentinels of Dominance to a whopping 270k each, and then with Crusade Slam 360k each. Remember, we've got 9 of those, more while mapping with auras and stuff. So there are a few things that I'm sure I've forgotten. I'll try and put those in the description. If anybody else has tried a Dominating Blow build, let me know. This build is absolutely fantastic. It's trivial to level with. You grab a single white weapon, put on Herald of Purity, and as soon as you get Dominating Blow, you're just running. Up until you get Dominating Blow, it's a little bit clunky, especially just with Herald of Purity, but it levels almost like a regular Necromancer build where you just throw on whatever defenses you can, and you just cruise your way through all the way up to T10 maps, and then at that point you're going to want probably Scourge Claws. But aside from that, we'll probably put the paste bin for this Path of Building link in the description, and we'll keep you posted. We'll try to get this build up to level 95, see if we manage to solve some of the issues, but I think the primary option for the build is to switch to Necromancer, lose a little bit of the hipster value, and play a little bit more meta class that provides us with a little more of what we need. So again, I hope everyone has had happy holidays. I hope you all have a great new year going forward, and we'll see you guys in the next video.